Welcome to another episode of Rate My Team. It is George from Fantasy Take TV, and today we have 6 teams from our fantasytaketv.com members. So thank you for submitting your teams. For the members who have not yet submitted their teams, feel free to DM one of me, Eno, or JD on Twitter or Discord, and we can do a write-up for your team. But yeah, we've closed submissions, so there's still about 50 people who haven't submitted. But that's fine. Hit us up if you want that done. But yeah, thanks again for those who had submitted their teams. I think teams are kind of looking similar, but there's a few things to point out here and there that just interesting to talk about. So the first team we have is Andrew212331. So all the other numbers with Andrew must have been taken for his Discord name. But we'll look at the defense. So the Doc, Dawson, Yo, Jones, it can be Constable setup. I think this is the most common setup we're seeing in the Discord. Then Wilmot and Chess on the bench. So I think it's a very solid setup. What I'm seeing a lot of people doing is running the Doherty and then the Ridley at D2 to save a bit of cash, which is interesting. I think we'll probably have a Ridley team somewhere, so we'll speak about that after. But I think Doherty and Dawson are pretty solid. My stance on Dawson is, as much as I love him as a player, and I think he'll do well, I think he can even outdo 110, which is what he's priced at. He did have the slow start last year. But I keep thinking the Finn McGuinness tag in round 6 just when upgrades start. So even though he scored an 80 that game, I think he needed 9 or 10 tackles, and his disposal count was really low. So yeah, hopefully that one goes well. But nonetheless, I think Doherty and Dawson pretty safe top 6, and you're paying close to, if not top dollar. But I think that's just the way it goes if you're not confident in the lower guys. Where I think it's Ridley, Dacos, and Young. Don't feel comfortable starting Young, and Dacos has his issues, and Ridley, I guess some people might not be comfortable with either. So we've landed on Doherty, Dawson. So I think that's a big tick. They're my favorite too. I think Yo everyone seems to have, and not much to say on Jones. Some people are like, well, do I really want to pay 230k for a key defender? I think it's more for stability purposes, and he's done 70 or 69 plus or something 5 years in a row basically, and the way he's going, and the commentary is that he's feeling super fit. Well, that's what he said. So there's no reason why he can't do 70 again. And the Dogs have lacked interceptors over the past few years. I think Alex Keith is a good interceptor, but they've used him more as key position. So even though Jones will be key position, someone has to take the intercepts down there, and maybe some of those go to Jones more so than it was at Carlton, hopefully. So I think he can do a 70 and just sit there and upgrade him when we can. I think Ginby's the lock, and then Constable. You make a case against Constable, but I think the upside's too much to pass up. And then Chess on the bench. Chess is an interesting one. He's one that I'll be fading, I think. Just because I just didn't like what I saw. I'm not sure. I think he's high sub risk. But nonetheless, he did look good in practice game 1. Practice game 2, he looked a little off the pace. But small sample, missed a lot of footy. I think they want to put games into him, so I think he should be an okay bench option. But I do prefer others. So in the midfield, we've got the Laird Bont combination. So I think that's the most common in our Discord. I don't think you can go too wrong with that. Even if Laird drops a bit of money, that's your safe captain option, and he's always going to be pretty difficult to bring in like he was last year. Don't think he had the slow start, so he would have started around 620, but he just hovered around just under 7 or 650 to 700 for the whole year. So I think he's fine and a great fallback captain option because the Crows play late a lot. And then Bont, I think most people have. McRae's an interesting one. Without a doubt, the hardest player to get a read on for me is Jack Macrae. My stance on Macrae is I don't mind him as a pick. I do wonder that his CBAs were only 60%, which is a bit of a worry because we want them in the 70s. I'm not sure it's going to be that way. So if he continues to get 60% CBAs and you don't have him, it won't hurt you. He's one I want in my team eventually, but one I'm okay to not start. I think, Bailey Smith, Bont, and Libba, even Treloar, they can do the grunt work, whereas Macrae's not. They don't need to rely on Macrae to do any of the grunt work, even though he can if they need him to, but they got others that can do it. So that can hurt his contested numbers, which dropped last year, and his tackles as well. But hopefully a few more marks this year. I think that's what we saw in the preseason game, so hopefully that holds up. Then Green Hopper, very common. Finn Callahan's an interesting one. What can he do this year? He's probably someone that he hasn't really shown a strong contested game yet. So when things aren't going GWS's way, it might be a little harder for him. I think he's a solid pick and he'll make decent money. I think he'll make 150k, which is what you want from him, but he's not one I'd move mountains to get in, and he does have a high ceiling and an easy fixture. So I think he's a solid pick. I wouldn't move mountains to get him in, but I do like that over Phillips on field. Ashcroft, McKenzie, Phillips on the bench. I think they all speak for themselves. And I'm not sure Chincotta plays, so I would have a plan B here. You know, you might have to downgrade Philippou to a Davey and then, I don't know, get Chester to the midfield, and then one of the other, whichever Carlton lad gets named, you chuck him on the bench. Witts Marshall, big fan of Jared Witts. I think people forget, you know, in pre-season, people just forget about durability too much. Like, I think I've taken Josh Kelly out of my team, but I'll get to that when I do my last minute changes on Thursday, as the fly just drifts by. I like Witts because of the durability, and the quote that lives rent-free in my head on Jared Witts is, he said that he's excited for what he can do with a full preseason compared to last year. So I think his tap work will be similar, and he won't get as many easy matchups, so it might even go down a little bit, but he's around the groundwork. He still walks a bit off the ball, which is a bit annoying. I was watching that in the practice game, but it was a practice game. So how much do you want to take out of that? But I think we're going to see a slightly improved around the ground game, and I think he can go do a 105 this year, which I think is solid, plus the durability and the buy. And he has a high ceiling, not as high as Darcy, but we saw last year he put up some monster scores. He even put a big one on Sean Darcy, interestingly. But yeah, regardless, I like the Witts pick. I sort of prefer it to Darcy, but I can't get to him at the moment. But maybe we can figure something out. And then Marshall's a lock. Standard forward line. There'll be a few Bruin teams. I'll probably touch on them after I've spent a bit of time on this team. Same with Flanders. But I think the one thing that stands out here is no Rosie. I do think Rosie is really strong value. I would fit him in if you want, but I don't think you have to pick him. He's one I would highly recommend. He did 105 in the midfield, and you have to remember in the practice game, 80% CBAs. I don't know if that holds, but if he does get that throughout the year, 70 plus, which he was getting about 60 when he was in the midfield last year, even more upside. He could push a 110 with those sort of midfield numbers. And he looks really good, so I'd be pretty nervous without Rosie, to be honest. And if you don't want to pick him, that's fine. But I guess you've got the extra mid in, so you might be okay there. But I'm a big fan of Rosie, and I would get him in personally, but it's up to you. And you got Philippou on the bench. I don't think you need Philippou, just because even though he can score really well, I'm not sure the mid-type's going to be there. We saw him cramp up pretty easily in the practice games. So I think he's going to rely on a bit of scoreboard impact, just impact moments, like maybe contested mark, a goal here or there. Maybe he rolls up a little bit in the midfield, but his role is not going to be super great. I'm not sure the Saints are great either. So I think he's one you can fade. Maybe just go down to, with some DPP, grab the other Carlton lad and Davey or something like that. Although Davey's probably not the best pick, but I think it's probably worth saving the 40k or 50k, whatever it is. So, very nice team, Andrew. I like it a lot. The next team we have is Chrono SC. So, similar setup to the backline last team. But we have Ridley and Tyler Young. So, we'll knock out Ridley first. I'm actually mildly concerned about not owning Ridley. And when going through the rankings of the defenders, I've got the top 5 as the 600k guys. And then I'm looking at the rest, and I'm thinking, who's it going to be? Is it Dale? But Dale's sharing with probably Crozier and Richards now. It was just him and Daniel basically all of last year. And Trelaw for a while as well. But yeah, back into the year, it hurt Dale. So I wonder if that continues. Then you think Dacos, he's going to get tagged a lot. And Young didn't really come through for us. And maybe Adam Sard, but Sard's never really been a massive accumulator, so it's hard. Who's going to be that D6? And you look at Ridley and you look at the game plan and his form and the PR out of him. Like, the article saying he's back to his best. I think the pick makes sense. His durability is okay. He's had a few minor soft tissue niggles, never significant ones, but he's had like quad soreness. I think he had a sore hamstring last year, a few weeks in, but only missed the one game, had the flu at the same time. I don't think that's too much to worry about. He usually plays 20 plus games, and at 500k, I think he's a very solid pick, and he seems very popular. I do prefer going up to Dawson, but man, the 100k, people are looking where to pull 100k, and it's your second 600k mid down to Ridley is what seems to be popular. So I like the pick. I think it's good. So you got Tyler Young in defense. Don't know what his job security is like. He's mature age. I've done a bit of research on him. I'm just reading Big Footy comments, and I think people are concerned like they could throw Miller as key back. I'd want to see the timeline on Robbie Tarrant. He's 34 now, but I think he'd probably play over Young. You know, Richmond would think they're competing. Might as well play Tarrant. So keep an eye out for that. Gave away a few frees as well, so he's mature age though. If the timeline on Tarrant is short term, I probably wouldn't go Young just because of job security, and you know, Constable could get dropped and Chincotta could be subbed. I think you could be in a bit of trouble there, so I'd probably try and find a way to get Wilmot in. But nonetheless, moving on to the midfield, so no 700k mid. I think that's fine. You'll get them cheaper, but it might be frustrating at times because you might be priced out of them. But you got to just back yourself, and you know you've put that money into a Setterfield basically and a Callaghan, so they should get you points over a Phillips on the bench. But yeah, Bond is fine. Brayshaw might cop a Bytel or Windhager tag in round 1, but nonetheless his fixture after that, if you can just ride that score, hopefully he pulls a 90 or something, you'll be very happy after that because the fixture opens up for Fremantle. So I think Brayshaw's a solid pick, and I don't have him top 8, but I think he'll be around the mark. But he did say that he is fitter this year than last year, I think. So maybe he goes one better. So I think it's a perfectly justifiable pick. Green, I think most people are picking. People can see the upside, the PR out of the Giants from him. I still do worry to see if he does slow down again like last year, but always the option to buy flip if that happens. Setterfield is solid. The interesting with Setterfield is I really wish we saw another week of data on this, just because Parrish and Shield did virtually nothing, and Setterfield did a lot, and most of it was in the first half when he had more of an inside role in the practice game, but he looked good in there. He's one way you don't notice too much because he's just doing all the in and under grunt work, but he's a strong contested ball winner. He's wanted to play inside for a long time now, but at Carlton, it's just too hard to get those opportunities. I think he's a good fit for Essendon. I dare say they might just let Parrish go and just persist with Setterfield, free up the cap space a lot, and you know try and rebuild a bit, whatever they want to do. I think he is the future for them, which is encouraging because that means they should play him. So I think it's a good pick. Full-blown inside mid-roll, he could probably go 100 plus, but I think he's going to have to be versatile, like the coaches said at times, so CBAs might only be 50%. And his kicking has always been atrocious. Like, you look at his disposal efficiency over the years, it's quite low, but he does win a lot of contested ball to balance that out. I think he's a fine pick, and yeah, fair bit of upside there. I won't be picking, but nonetheless, he's a solid one to have on field. I think Hopper didn't look great in preseason, but still had a lot of contested ball and scored okay. So I think he's one where safe top 3 CBA, no job security issues or anything like that, and will make money. So I think he's perfectly fine. And then Warple. So I do like Warple here. I'm a fan. I'm aware that things could go south. You know, he just has to drop in form or, you know, lose his confidence when he kicks poorly and whatnot, and just have one of those games and all of a sudden he's under pressure. But yeah, the PR has been good from Warple. They're saying he's, you know, super hard worker. They're saying he's back. I like the price of Warple as well. He's a little bit cheaper than some of the other 300k options, so he's fairly cheap. And I guess you kind of hope it goes well, but judging from what we've heard and seen, I think it will go well. So I think he's a solid option. And moving on to Finn Callaghan, I look at your team and I think you can probably field McKenzie or Phillips. Probably McKenzie at the moment looked a little better, and probably give up Callaghan and maybe fix up some of your bench spots. You know, maybe you can throw a McKenna or McLean on the bench just to strengthen up your bench. You know, Joe Ritz is, I can see there. There hasn't been any hint of him playing, so I'd probably do that. Split Callaghan into, say, a McLean and McKenna or something like that, and even maybe get up to a Wilmot if money allows it. I think that'll give you a bit of breathing room on the bench. But still a fine pick if you want to pick him. Darcy Marshall combo. I think, yeah, I like Darcy paired with Radigalia. I've made that change. I had no Radigalia initially, but I've made that change. I won't go without Radigalia if I go Darcy, although I'm still deciding between him and Wits in bloody 4 days out. And then, yeah, the forward line, the Dunkley, Rosie, Taranto, Gordon, Bruin, Flanders combo. That's my favourite forward line. I've locked that away. People ask me, like, oh, you know, with my team, you know, why don't you just downgrade Bruin and get another premium in? And I say, no, Bruin's untouchable. So I'm a big fan of Tanner Bruin. I really like his game, his contest game. And I think just the Geelong, the club in general, they just seem to make players and new recruits better for some reason, and I think that will happen with Tanner Bruin. So I really like this team, a little bit different. Love the Setterfield and Brayshaw sort of pods. Throw in Ridley as well. I think it's a very strong team. I highly advise fixing up Young and Richards on your bench though, and I think you can pull that money from Callaghan, but if you're attached to Callaghan, then something else would have to go, but that would be my advice. Next team is Guigo, if that's how you say it. Another Ridley team, so looking at the defense. So I think, I'm not sure this is his actual team, but I think he set himself a goal of 13 keepers or premiums, and this is where he's landed. So I don't need to speak on some of the other boys, but I can see Ridley here I spoke about before, so I do like him at the price. Jeremy McGovern, I think his issue will always be durability, but I remember on the broadcast, they said Jeremy McGovern, actually, it might have been last year or the year before, he was like a top few defender option because he was intercepting everything, but he's fit at the moment. Yeah, they on the broadcast rather, they were saying that they want to free him up more, let him be that natural interceptor. And West Coast, well, their whole game plan, they were supposed to stop the chipping in the back line, but I'm not sure they're deconditioned just yet about for that, because that's exactly what we saw in the preseason game. A lot of switching, a lot of marks on the wing, in the middle, down back, just everywhere. I think he could be a fun pod, but you got to remember the durability is a little bit iffy, but you know, he can pull up some monster scores. So it's a bit of a fun pick. I think the durability is the one that, and just the uncertainty around him. He's never averaged 100, so why would he now? But I think he can get on a hot streak and make it, I don't know, a lot of points and money and just ride it from there. But if you want to do it, I don't have a problem with that. But I do it. I think it's a little risky for my liking. Then Hayden Crozier. Crozier is interesting. It seems like he's worked his way into the best 22, but he's probably a few bad games away from being out. But his best footy is definitely good enough, so I'm not sure what's happened. I think he played well in the practice games. He's a versatile defender as well, so they can use him however they want, but he's on kick-ins. He doesn't mind an uncontested mark. We saw him take a fair few in the practice game, in the intra-club, and 100 average in the VFL. So he's a solid option. I think he can do 75 plus, especially with kick-ins. He could even do 80, I think, but it might be a bit of a stretch because he's never done that before. But I think in patches he has, but it's just whether he's discovered his best. So I think he's a solid pick. And do you go Crozier or Jones? Well, I think Crozier should out-average him. The role will be better, but Jones, you get that job security. You know, Jones is so much more important to the Dogs than Crozier, but at the end of the day, you just want him to score the most points. And I guess, yeah, do you go for the upside or do you go for the job security? I think people are opting for job security because of the iffy bench options that we have, but I think it's fine if you want to go for Crozier. I think you've got McVee here as well. Sounds like Salem will be in round 2. I could see McVee coming out for Salem maybe, but I think he'll get a game round 1, and I think they like him ahead of Hibberd. So I look at the team sheets to see if anyone else can go out for Salem. If it looks obvious that McVeigh can go out for Salem, I'd probably avoid. Plus, he's playing lockdown for the most part, so his scoring power isn't super high, and his job security is a bit iffy, and he's sub-risk. So he's one like a last resort only, I think. I probably wouldn't go there, but I guess we'll monitor the situation. Interesting midfield. Bont, Jelly, I think are fine. I spoke about Jelly in the team video. I think on paper, like Jelly can score very heavy with CBAs, but he's never had a proper stretch, or probably for 3-4 years, over 4 years now. But the durability issue will always be there. It's been probably good the past few years, And before that was pretty horrible, but I remember 2021, I only missed a week with a bit of quad soreness, something like that. It just feels like he might need a week off. Can he handle massive inside mid minutes given his durability? But he is, 580 is a little bit cheaper than your 600k or your more expensive 600k defenders or your, 600, 630 plus midfielders. So that price if that helps you get the extra premium, I think it's fine. Bailey Smith for 540. Don't know about Baz. I think his issue is he's versatile, so they can take him out the CBAs if they want him to. He can play half forward, he can rotate on a wing. And his kicking, I'm not sure it's fixed yet. It's just I haven't seen evidence that his disposal has improved. And when he was scoring really well last year, it was with massive time on ground, and I'm not sure that will hold. I think he'll be back to low 70s, not low 70s, low 80s, like most of the other dogs, but I haven't really seen it this year yet. I don't see him as a top 8 mid in Supercoach. I don't know. He's very talented, and his durability has been a little bit iffy. He's had leg soreness throughout the preseason, had a few niggles last year, adductor soreness as well. I would avoid Baz personally, but he's so talented. You could have egg on your face, but he's not one on my radar. I think the rest of your midfield is fine. I think you got Jinbi in here, so you can always throw him down back if required. No Cam McKenzie. I think that's what happens when you go the extra premium. I think that's probably the only good reason to get rid of Cam McKenzie if it helps you get the extra premium. So I think that's okay, but I do think he'll make some good money. Darcy Marshall combo we've spoken about, so that's solid. And then, standard forward line, throw in Toby McLean on field. I'd probably field Fergus Green against Essendon over Toby McLean, as silly as that sounds. For some reason, just gut feel, guy that's been waiting for his opportunity, he's shown threatening signs. I just feel like he'll have a big game, but luck of the draw really with these sort of players. With McLean, I don't feel comfortable with him on field at the moment, just because I haven't seen him score well on field yet this year, and the role has been a lot of wing, a bit of deep forward, a little bit of half forward, no CBAs, so don't know where he fits in. And sort of Oscar Baker sort of played the role that you'd hope McLean would play, or the game that McLean would play in the second practice game where Baker went 110 or something. I'm still keen to start McLean. I just would like him on the bench. I have him at the moment, Phillips and McLean, M8, M9, so I can try and figure out after a few weeks who I should play. I'll probably lose that rookie roulette every week, but nonetheless, also got Chandler here. David King was saying, I think we'll see plenty of Cade Chandler this year, so he's not an insider at Melbourne, but for whatever reason, he seems to think he'll play a bit this year. I've heard a lot of good things about him. I think he's an okay bench option. You got to remember he's a forward. Remember he is a forward, so probably get the average 55. Not great, but at least he's playing for one of the strongest teams, and he'll get a fair bit of supply. He's a sub risk, so strictly bench only, and we'll see if better options pop up. But I do think he's not the worst option. So thank you for your team. The next team we have is Humph's team, and we can see a nice few pods in the midfield. So I think this defense is very standard, bit of money in the bank, so you can go Chincotta or Cowan. Spoken about Ridley before. It's an interesting one. A lot of people jumping on now. Just don't know. I think people were burnt by him in the past, whether they started him last year or they brought him in the year before, but I do feel at the price 500, played key position last year. That's not going to happen under Scott, you would think. Still a few mouths to feed back there, but it just depends. Maybe they just give the license to Ridley and McGrath, and maybe less responsibility for Redmond to rebound, although I think Redmond will take a fair few kick-ins, so they'll probably split between the three, Ridley, Redmond, and McGrath. And then it doesn't seem like Nick Hind is best 22, which is interesting. So I wonder if they might play Ambrosio over Hind, who can get a bit of the ball as well. It's a really tough one to read, the Bombers. Just the game plan, the amount of marks they took doesn't hold for the most of the year. I do remember, and this is completely different, but Jack Bowes in 2021 had a free distributing role, and they changed their game plan, and they also changed Bowes' role completely. Just the chip mark back there wasn't working, and since then Gold Coast haven't been the friendliest team, apart from their contested balls, and of course Ruckman farming hit at advantage. Apart from that, they haven't had a whole lot of relevance. especially down back. But that is a different team. But yeah, I just wonder if the game plan holds for the year. But nonetheless, I think even in a Ridley in not ideal circumstances last year still did low 90s, and he's still able to get his 15 to 25 disposals every game, a few intercepts. So I think he's a solid pick. Moving to the midfield, so Paddy Cripps is an interesting one. Seeing virtually no Patrick Cripps, I think people are scarred from a few years or even last year when they brought him in, where he was still okay, but at times we thought, he's fake premium, then he starts coming good again, but probably doesn't ruck this year. We saw last year with Pitney out, or De Koning, whoever was out, they just didn't have that second ruck, so he was used in the ruck, which would have hurt his scoring a bit selfless. So yeah, I think without the hamstring game, which I'd argue is a bit unlucky because he did overstretch it, didn't strain it rather, so only missed the 1 week. Did 113 last year, still should be in his physical prime. No reason why he can't do 113 again this year. So without ruck minutes, maybe he can do 115 plus. So see how he goes. I think he'll be around the mark of the top 8. I don't have him in my top 8, but I think he's an okay pick if you want to go there. I can't really argue hard against it. Green seems pretty solid. Spoke about Setterfield before. Probably gets a 50% CBAs, 4th string midfielder. Maybe that's like a 90 average. But we know that, with more responsibility, he can do better than that. But I just think that will be the circumstances. And then Lockie Ash is interesting. So we saw him go 85 over a stretch a few years ago at halfback. I think the new coach has come in. Lockie Ash, you're a halfback. We want to settle you there. Does he have a role change throughout the year? Probably doesn't really matter because probably not a keeper. But regardless, you want him to just go 90 plus and then hold it down to the buys or whatever. I think he'll make money because he's having a role change, and we see mid prices that have a role change are generally some of the better ones, or because they didn't have a good role before. So I don't mind the Ash pod. I'm certainly not against it. Worth noting that they got Whitfield and Isaac coming back there, and if Himmelberg goes back, then I think they're kind of all in trouble. But regardless, I do wonder if they give him defensive tasks, because it seems like they want. I still think Isaac Cummings their main guy back there, and Whitfield's not really your lockdown guy. So maybe Ash can do that sometimes. I could be wrong there. That's something that probably worth looking into. But regardless, his attributes say speed off halfback and run and carry. All his junior highlights are all run and carry sort of stuff. Seems mad to use him in the midfield to see what he can do at halfback. So I think that should be his role for his career, but maybe they want him in the midfield at some point in his career. But for now, he's halfback. He's done 85 in that role before. I think he can do it again. Just not sure what the kick-in numbers were, but I suspect coming in Whitfield take more. But yeah, might cap his ceiling at like a 90 at best, but I think he goes like 85 would be my guess anyway. Can have the odd massive game though. Darcy and Marshall, I think that's solid. McAndrew probably doesn't play, so I think you probably just go the loop or Radicalea. I think you got the money to get to Radicalea, so it's probably worth it. Dunkley, Rosie, Taranto, Gordon, Bruin, Flanders. So yeah, we've spoken about this combination a fair bit. I probably haven't touched on Flanders yet. I'm a big fan of Flanders. I think if you can get 30 off half forward, I think that's great. I guess fundamentally, we don't really go for these types of players, but because he's 250k, I'm not sure we want to field Toby McLean or even a Sheasel here if his role isn't good enough throughout the game. But yeah, what we like about Flanders is, I think, all the PR. We saw, I think it was David King spent the week at Gold Coast, and he said, or the weekend up there, and he said, Flanders is going to be a star. He won't get the prime role, but, he's at half forward rolling up. So we see that role where if you're around the ball a fair bit, even without Took, he's still going to be the half forward rolling up. Just maybe there's a few less points to go around. I think he could do 85 in this role. Yeah, something has clicked for him, and he's a ball magnet. We saw that in the VFL last year by the numbers anyway. Passes the eye test and works really hard. The work rate getting up and down the ground. He wants to be around the ball. Hopefully, it's probably going to be better when Ellis comes back. If Ellis settles on the wing like he's been training for. I think he has a calf issue at the moment, because I think that means they'll play Ellis and Hollands on the wing. maybe that means less wing rotations for Flanders, and he can play half forward and get a little bit of CBAs and half forward rolling up, rather than being stuck on the wing. So I think that will help him, actually. So yeah, big tick for the Flanders pick. I know people will be worried about the CBAs, but I think he'll be round the ball enough at the price to do 80, 85. The next team we have is Macca. So I think we've got this one and another one to go. Some interesting ones here. Looking at the defense, so Isaac Cumming and Nick Dacos. These are interesting. So obviously go over the rest, but Yo, Jones, Gimby, Constable, very common combo. And then McKenna I like on the bench. We'll get to McKenna in a second, but Isaac Cumming, again, similar with Ash, although Ash is a bit cheaper. Cumming was tracking to be a top 6 mid earlier last year, or top 7, whatever it was. But we saw Himmelberg come in and kind of spoil that party. Now we have Whitfield more down there and Ash back down there. So I'm not exactly sure what that means for Isaac Cummings' output. So I think it's a hard one. I don't know what to expect from him. Like, he could average 90, he could average 105, anywhere between that. It just depends on how much responsibility he takes from the others. And I think it's fair to say that Ash and Whitfield will take a fair bit. Has the last buys. I think it's an okay pick. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure what the kick and split will be. I'm not sure how the rebounds are shared. It's going to be even across all three. I imagine Isaac Cumming would be the main guy. He's probably the best interceptor of the three. I think it's an okay pick. I just slightly worry a little bit on, maybe Cummings down 1 week and then the other guys go off the other week, and just maybe it all balances out. But yeah, there's a few chefs in the kitchen back there. I think it's okay if you want to go for it though. But me being conservative, I wouldn't. But could be wrong there. Go with your gut on that one. And then Nick Dacos, I think most people have dropped. Plays Geelong in round 1. It sounds like there's been much improvement from him this year. I think the problem was people were looking for more midfield time, and they have so many midfielders to go through there now. You just wonder if he gets much at all, and he hasn't shown a strong contested game just yet. I think that's what we're waiting to see. I still think he can do 95 plus, and I think he'll be a fine D6 by year's end. So I think he's okay. Just teams will go out their way to tag him. I think they see that how much influence he can have and how easily he can be tagged. So I would expect multiple tags from him throughout the year, and that's probably putting me off Dacos. But I think when it all comes out in the wash, I still think he can do 95 odd. But yeah, the tags will come, unfortunately. So I'd probably just pick one of the 500k guys, just because it's unlikely both are around the. You'll probably be missing one of the top 600k guys, plus if someone else pops up. So, yeah, I'd probably just pick the one, because I think one probably needs to be traded at some point. But if you're really happy with both, I think that's fine. Now, moving on to the midfield, Oliver, Bont, Kelly, Green. So I think that's fine. Kelly comes with his risks. Oliver over Laird, no issue with that at all. I think most people would have had Oliver ranked above Laird, but it's interesting. I wonder how real the people are just saying it's nothing to worry about, but are they going to give Oliver the 87% CBAs again last year? Maybe it drops a little bit as they rotate a few players more through there. So I doubt we see much, if any, halfback time at all. But maybe they just get rotated a little bit more and cuts his CBAs a little bit. Regardless, I think Oliver is a urgent trade in target if you don't have him. So I think he's a solid guy and a great captain option, so no issue with him. Midfield setup is completely fine. I think Phillips on the field round 1 against West Coast, but I do worry just a bit fumbly in the practice game, very poor disposal, so hopefully that the Dogs didn't kill his confidence too much. And then I think the bench is fine. I think, yeah, you can just go up to 123. There, Witts, Marshall, spoke about Witts in the first team. Yeah, I do like Witts. I think he's probably still overpriced, but again, he said that he's excited to see what he can do with a full preseason, and I just think his around the ground game should improve a fair bit, and I think it's improved from what I saw. He had 13 touches in about 3/4 in an extra 5 minutes or something. He had 13 touches, which is quite good, tracking for your 17, 18 touches or whatever. And in the first practice game, he looked like a mean machine in there, so he looked fantastic. But yeah, probably Bruce probably outrucked him, but Witz was better around the ground. Moving on to the forward line. No, I think Madden is fine. No Radigalia. If you go on Witz, I think that's fine because Witz is our most durable option, so that's part of the reason why you pick him. Dunkley, Rosie, Taranto, Gordon, Bruin, Flanders. Big tick. That's my favourite forward line. No, not seeing any cogs, which is okay. And Sam Sturt here. Don't know if he's best 22 or not, but he has shown he's able to throw in a big score here and there, and he looks really good playing that forward / high half forward role. I'd be interested to hear a bit more PR on Sturt because his upside is a bit better than like a Chandler, but and also neither have great job security. I think Fremantle's had some of their tools out like a Jackson, so yeah, he's one where we. Before picking Sturt, I think look at team sheets. We'll probably assess it in the Discord and try and figure out if he's best 22 or not. He's one we might have to figure out on like a Thursday night, but yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I think it's a very solid team. I think these two cheap defenders, I think maybe you can end up flipping one of them in the buy or something if one of them turns out not to be good enough. But yeah, I think you could run it if you wanted though. So the next team is the last team, so ScoobsAhoy. And looking at the defense, very standard team. I think we probably touch on Jack Steele, a bit of a different one at the moment, but looking at the defense, so spoke about Dacos before. Also, yeah, Doherty D1. I think most people have. Seems to be very popular at the moment. Just his tendencies just to have a knack for finding the pill was probably what holds him good stead, even though he didn't score as well as some others. It's just, yeah, 4 preseason this time around and just loves finding the pill. So it feels like a safe option. And yeah, Dacos, as I spoke about before, I think he should be okay. It's hard to know what sort of output we're going to get when he was tagged so hard by the worst tag in the game. By worst, I mean the hardest tag in the game in Finn McGuinness. And I think he still pulled a 70, so he won't be tagged every week. And, you know, part of the concern with Dacos is he does rely on receiving the ball rather than earning it a little bit, especially when you're down back, and that is the nature of being a halfback flanker as well. So yeah, the worry is that he gets tagged too easily, and people are worried about those down games. But he is cheap, and when he's not tagged, he should go 100 plus. So, excuse me. I think it's an okay pick. It's probably one I'll fade. I probably prefer Ridley. Think just because of the tags mostly, but yeah, it's up to you. Go with your gut on Dacos. Crozier at D4, I think it's okay. I think people are just worried about his job security. Again, it depends on you how you want to play. Do you want to play it for a bit more upside and risk it? Then go Crozier over Jones. Do you want to go a bit safer? Then Jones over Crozier. So Crozier should outscore him. And I think, yeah, Cruzier's done stretches of 85 in the past, but yeah, don't know. He didn't get any kick-ins in the practice game because Daniel went back, and I guess that is part of the worry. If the Daniel experiment doesn't work and they decide, well, you know, he's on a big contract, can't really drop him, maybe we send him down back, it might be trouble for Crozier. But the way I see it, I think Crozier's versatile defender. Why would they? You know, I've always hated Daniel at halfback just because he's a defensive liability, and I think that's what they figured out in the preseason, trying to find a new role for him. So it'd be interesting. It would make you sweat a little bit knowing that, you know, one move like that could hurt Crozier. He might be a sub-risk as well, probably more of a starting sub-risk because he's versatile back there. But if he holds his form like he did, I think he'll be good and he'll make a bit of money. So he looks good, and I do like him as a pick. And I don't think I have him at the moment, but he's one where if the structure fits, I'll fit him in. Moving on to the midfield, so I think we've touched on Laird, Bont, and Green. I think everyone has. And then the rest of the setup, but Jack Steele, it's weird because people just sort of expect like Steele to get back to his uber premium best, or not even that, at least hold price. But people are concerned just because there's been nothing good said about Jack Steele in the preseason. There's literally nothing. Like, he's not back to his best. Training reports, like a bit of non-contact training, was a bit comments like he's been proppy at training, stuff like that. And he was tackling fine and he's trimmed down a bit, but didn't see much outside ball in the second practice game. But in a practice game, he doesn't really have to do that. But at least when you see players like Laird, even McRae do that, you feel a little bit safer because people are slightly concerned about Steele, or some people in the camp like, what's there to be concerned about? He's proven premium, he's had close to a full preseason. Like, what's the issue? People just want to be sure. And I think that's why people are looking elsewhere than Jack Steele. So I think you can still pick him if you've got faith in him. But I think people are... It's not magic that his ownership is like halved or whatever it is. It's very low now. I don't know. It's probably under 15% or something. So people are seeing the same thing. Or it could be a good thing because you want to keep him as people are jumping off when they might not even have a good enough reason to. I'm avoiding Steele because it's conservative, but if you've got faith, then go for it. Darcy Marshall combo is fine, and then Dunkley, Rosie, Taranto, Gordon, Bruin, Flanders, and then Chandler bench I think is fine. So yeah, pretty standard as I've spoken about. I think the one we can touch on here, probably Gordon. I think people are just blindly locking him in, but I think it's hard not to with the performance he gave. And I think it was Luke Parker was on radio saying, he'll get a bit of mid-time and he's gone up a level this year. And when you hear positive PR, you see good trajectory, you see the preview in the preseason. I'm actually quite confident Gordon will be a keeper for us, despite the fact that he's unproven and the CBAs might not be super high, but he's far too good, far too talented, and everything adds up to him pushing 100 average this year. And hopefully that's enough and he can even do a bit more because that's what we want. So that's where we stand. And then, yeah, Bruin. I'm a big fan of Bruin. I think he'll get decent CBAs and they'll be mad not to use him there. And being in the Geelong system, that should give him a nice boost like it did to Dangerfield, to Stingel, to Cameron. These guys went up a level when they went to Geelong. Why would it be different for Tanner Bruin? So, yeah, we'll leave it at that. Thank you to everyone for their teams and thank you to everyone who's signed up. Still one more podcast to go, the Q&A. We'll get that done, I think, probably Monday or Tuesday night. And get your last minute questions in if you remember, and we'll leave it at that. So thank you for watching and we'll see you guys in the next one.